What is up, everybody? CP and SJ with you for another week of Every Day We're Covering, where we talk the world of sports, wagering, and having a good time. We're coming fresh off of a Derby day, and it's the Cinco de Mayo holiday weekend. I had a lot of fights going on as well, so we're going to talk Derby. We're going to recap fight picks that SJ had, and we've got some Game 7 talk for you in the NHL and the NBA, and some other topics we're going to throw at you as well. SJ, how's the weekend been treating you here? Weather here has been great. Wasn't so great for the Derby, but we've had having a good one.
Yeah, I've seen some crazy scenes coming from there. And one race, they're just like, don't. The infield said, we don't care. We're just gonna keep our spot out here. They got a little nasty out there, but it's been all right. Lot going on, and maybe a little bit of a mixed bag as far as picks goes. And we got hit with those scratches pretty heavy. We can, of course, as we go along, we'll talk about that a little bit more as far as the Derby goes. But at least there was, plenty of options and opportunities out there to catch something, maybe to grab some entertainment over the weekend. So that's always a good thing.
Yeah, that is a good thing. Lots of sporting events out there for you to partake in if you wanted to. So hopefully you enjoyed that. Let's dive right in here. Well, first off, of course, we always talk about what we're drinking. We're neither of us are actually drinking right now as we do this, so not going to get too heavy into that. I did have a couple things to mention for you on that front, though. Of course, we've been drawing out the Parched Madness maybe a little bit longer than we should have, and that's my doing a little bit. But I did feel it was fitting that we had the final matchup here this weekend over the Cinco de Mayo holiday weekend, and of course, part of that finals matchup was the margarita, which obviously is going to be on the top of people's minds right now anyways, but I had a pretty good feeling that this is the way this was going to go. The voting pretty much overwhelmingly in favor of the margarita. I've still got the voting open here a little bit as we record this, but it's not going to change. The margarita is going to win the Parched Madness. It was up against the wheat beer in the finals, which was maybe a little bit of surprise who that contender was. But I did get some good comments both ways for each of them. No surprise I think to us that the margarita is going to be our inaugural Parched Madness champion.
Well, maybe celebrate with a couple of those tonight afterwards. We get done recording. It sounds like a good thing. But you mentioned the nice weather. Spent much of the day outside, kind of getting the yard looking right finally because of the rain that's been had and all that type of thing. Got to do that. So wasn't prepared as possible, but at least we got knocked out. So that's one thing to cross off the list for the weekend.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I just got done out mowing, throwing some grass seed down myself. So, it's that time of year for sure to get that stuff done. But if you have not imbibed in enjoying a margarita here for for Cinco de Mayo weekend here, then make sure you get on that here tomorrow or on the day of, whatever, there to enjoy and celebrate our winner of the inaugural Parched Madness. Now, a couple of the quick feedback things that I did get that I appreciated was there was one gentleman that said, my vote kind of depends on what the situation is. He's like, after a good day out on the lawn mowing the yard, then a solid wheat beer sounds pretty darn good. Now, on the other time, I'm eating, dinner or having some, tacos, and of course, then I'm down in the margarita. So I get that. And, it's a little bit situational sometimes.
It's whatever frame of mind you're in, just let it rip. I guess that's what I would suggest because that's kind of how I did it because I kind of was along those lines, like what sounds good at the moment when I was voting, or maybe if I had plans to do something specific with some of the other rounds, I was like, I'm about to go have something, have a lawn mowing lager right after this, so I'm gonna, go with the lager or whatever. But yeah, and maybe even next time we'll try to do something different. Maybe do a specific type of beer, a type of lager, a type of wheat, maybe a brand of margarita or tequila that someone really likes. Maybe we'll switch it up and do something like that. But definitely appreciate the participation and the feedback, of course.
Yeah. Well, and maybe sometime too we do those actual situational things. We'll do the margarita at the Mexican restaurant to the beer after the yard's mowed.
The shower beer is going to be tough to knock off if that's in the list. I'll tell you that.
No doubt, especially after you mow the yard too. That's even better. I appreciated that. That was fun. And then the other one, we did get some controversy too, by the way, on the the selection committee. We got some selection committee feedback because there was a gentleman who, fun coach that I used to work with a lot when I was in the journalism game. But he's a big Jack and Coke guy. And he's like, that was not in the bracket, so I'm gonna not even vote on your damn thing. It's like, so I haven't responded to him yet, but I'm gonna tell him, that's part of the deal. We had to create some controversy with the selections. I mean, that's how this works, right? There's always that argument with the selection committee.
I believe that was the first four out as the last of them I had. So maybe next year they play a little tougher non-con schedule, and then they'll sneak in there on that strength of schedule. They not enough quad one victories. I guess that's all it boils down to in these days.
Exactly. And of course, leave it to a coach to complain about his team being left out. So, good stuff though. Appreciate it. Yeah, love the feedback. It's fun doing that, and I'm glad folks enjoyed it with us there a little bit too. Yeah, we'll mix it up down the road for the next time around. I did want to mention too. I saw a beer that I'm anxious to try. From the fine folks at Single Speed Brewing Company. They hail out of the Waterloo Cedar Falls area initially, but they do have a tap room in Des Moines now. Haven't been there yet, by the way. I'm looking forward to going and checking it out because looks like they have a killer patio set up down by the river. But this is a beer that is interesting that they're marketing it this way, I think. But it's called the Cerveza de la Casa, and it's a Mexican style dark lager. It's at a 4.8% ABV, and they kind of market it actually as a summer beer, which you normally wouldn't say dark in summer, but they say, a grainy malt forward beer that's good on the drinkability scale. They said it's clean and crisp and good for summer days. So kind of an interesting marketing tactic, and yeah, definitely one I want to get in the fridge to try out once I have that availability.
Yeah, that sounds interesting considering like you said, the juxtaposition there of not thinking that, but seems like there's a lot of people trying a lot of things at least this season. Just kind of, we talked about the ultra light stuff, but also just I've seen some different variations and just different what do you want to call, like flavors, or just using different types of ingredients that you don't typically see. So that's always fun to try something different there and get out there and expand your palate a little bit.
Yeah. So anxious to try that one out. They just did a rebranding with it, and of course it's out for the season. And they've got their new cool cans that look pretty sweet. So have to track that one down at some point. All right, as we get into the sports topics here, of course we'll start with the Derby, the 151st running of the Kentucky Derby this weekend. A very wet day at Churchill Downs. It was raining off and on pretty much all day long. I think about every race that was ran was on a sloppy track, and of course they always do their best to, they call it sealing, so they go out and kind of press the track a little bit, seal it up, try to get it to a little bit more firmness out there, so they're not totally sinking their feet into the mud. But didn't really know. I mean, it's always a variable, and of course, it seems like these last decade we've had a lot of rainy days for Derby Day, so it's not unusual. But it is unusual for some of these horses because a lot of them, run in different places. They had quite a few that were just primarily West Coast horses and hadn't run in the rain at all during their career yet. So you just don't know how they're going to react when they get in that scenario, and it just throws a wrinkle into how the race is going to be run. And especially if you're doing some, handicapping ahead of time, it does change the feel of the race because, just naturally a wet track is going to slow it down. And it got slower that first, quarter mile that they ripped off there. The pace was slower, and when they got to the different marker points throughout the race, you kind of saw those numbers and it was like, yeah, they're a little bit behind where maybe I thought this could be because there was a lot of fast horses in this field, and it could have really been a blistering pace, I think, if it would have been a perfect track. But since it was wet, slowed them down, and then it gives the chances usually to what are closing horses because they're going to be able to save a little bit of energy. They're not running as fast, and then of course they have that chance to break at the end and try to hunt somebody down, and that's exactly what happened in the race. It sure looked like the favorite was going to be able to pull it off, I thought, when they came around the corner, as journalism started to really kick it into gear, was kind of just picking them off one by one as they came around that turn for the home stretch. But Sovereignty was right on his heels, And as soon as they got into that flat stretch, then it was you could see that Sovereignty had a little bit more in the tank and got ahead of him and ended up pulling off the victory, which was not a total surprise. Went off at 5-1, another horse that a lot of people respected. But yeah, I mean, when you're keeping your eye on what was a prohibited favorite throughout the day, you really thought that journalism was going to win this thing, but you just got hunted down, and it favored the closer in the way that turned out.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of the conditions, at least there's a couple of things there, and I know just I didn't catch all of it, obviously, because what do they got? 5, 6, 7, 8 hours maybe of
Yeah.
pre-race, kind of talk and stuff. How it depends what network you're watching, but either way, just some of the bits and pieces that I did catch, a couple interesting, tidbits that I found didn't help either way because I wasn't really at that point. I was like everybody I had a outside shot on that I thought maybe was gonna end up being scratched. So I just I'll just go with journalism and stick with the favorites. So wasn't trying to make another play, but just kind of curious what the experts and those there on site thought. And one thing was that several of them, the horses, and one in particular, I can't remember they're talking about at the time, but hadn't even run on a dirt track at all. Like it,
Mm.
so that always, and then it wasn't dirt; it was basically mud.
Yeah.
So then it's like, well, that even adds more of kind of interesting, like whether it could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. We don't know until it happens, but
Mhm.
that's always interesting. That kind of added to the intrigue there, and then also because of course you think about it as the horse because that's who's running, but as far as the jockeys go, one of the analysts just kind of compared it like driving in a rainstorm when it's like that because your vision's not as good. Of course your eyewear there is going to be covered. Kind of no got no kind of wiper system on those little shades or nothing, so you can't crank up the defrost and let it go clear off. But I mean that was the interesting point. Of course, I'm not saying this is the first time it's ever brought up or thought about, but it was something to consider just the fact that, yeah, they're not really, you know, they have an important, role in the race and it's about the horse mostly, but the jockey definitely I mean, that's a factor too when you consider
Mhm.
the weather. That doesn't just affect the horse.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It's hard, I'm sure, to kind of stay on track, and you're thinking about all the things that you want to do during the race and the instructions that you got, and then yeah, the fact that you just flat out can't see sometimes, like that's got to be difficult. I can't imagine, and then the pace that they're going, like that's got to be a little bit. I mean, sure, yeah, these guys have done it forever, so they don't have nerves, but for average Joe, that'd be pretty damn scary. So
Yeah,
they said that they on the average they were talking. I do love NBC's
that's
coverage.
what I was like.
They have guys that really know what they're talking about, and they asked the one of the staff up there, like what would you typically do here, and he's like, well, you're wearing at least six pairs of the goggles, and you're just flipping them down. And so you got six of them, you flip one down, hanging around your neck, the next one's on. You're just trying to keep a little bit of a clean pair as you're going around, and I mean that's another task that you got to focus on, as you're going through the race. So pretty wild. There was a couple interesting things too that I think maybe were added into this because of those conditions too. I saw a story this morning that I guess back in 2022 there were some new rules implemented on like how many times that they can use the switch in a certain amount of strides for the horse. Well, and the jockey ended up doing it one too many times that was allowed in one of those periods, so he's going to get fined for it. It's not something where they disqualify the horse and you don't win, but it's an ethical thing that they're trying to keep the race is good for the animal as they can. And he's like, he basically just said, I didn't realize it in the moment. I'm worried about a lot of things and I didn't think about that. So, he wasn't off by much. I think it was one, he went one swat over the limit. But, yeah, it's just another thing. Like, it's crazy how many things you probably are thinking of in that short 2 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot going on and then at that high rate of speed at the same time, and then all that. I mean, I still can't get over the crowds. I know it's a popular event. Don't get me wrong, but it's just like that is a lot of people and
Yeah.
not a lot of space. Like it's just wild that I mean, and I get because you have the whole infield deal, so you can really cram them in there. But I mean, as far as like the seating part of it, I don't think that's extraordinarily large. It's just like so many people just want to be there and be a part of it and get their eyes on it, or just whatever the case may be. That's just to me that's always wild, the scenes, and especially when you have kind of kind of an, maybe not the greatest weather day, you get some pretty crazy footage and aerial shots and that type of thing to go along with all that, and it makes for just the whole event just kind of puts it on that next tier of certain things. And I was I know they just do that kind of like stop and pose type thing, and they talk with whoever a lot of the owners. And I did catch a little bit of Jason Worth, the former Philadelphia Philly. I guess he was had a horse in the race,
Mm-hmm.
literally, and
Mm-hmm.
it was just kind of interesting. I was like, I'd forgot about him. I was like, oh, it makes sense. And they made a Louisville Slugger, and that kind of had a cool connection because he's obviously used to play baseball, and of course Louisville Sluggers, like been for baseball as long as we can think about it. So I
Mm-hmm.
just thought that was kind of there's some interesting, even just when it's like a annual thing, it's like, oh, this kind of gets tired or this or that. But it seems like they also do a good job kind of going off your coverage there of NBC of trying to at least keep some new angles involved and not just kind of the same old song and dance.
Yeah, I agree. I appreciated the honesty there too of Junior Alvarado and on his ride, the jockey, and it was kind of telling it like it is, as well with that situation afterwards. And yeah, I that was one thing I was going to bring up. I thought that was unique. They just started doing that, I think, here recently, where they kind of do they got the wandering man on the street type rover. He's just like walking around the paddock, like, oh, here's this guy. Like, I'm sure it is set up probably a little bit for him. They make it
Yeah.
look pretty natural, but I'm sure that they're aware that, hey, I'm going to stop and talk to you. But it's kind of cool. I appreciated that, how they're just like, oh, here's this horse. Look at him. He looks good right now. Or, he's acting up a little bit. It kind of gives you that little bit of inside view of what you normally wouldn't see just from typical coverage. So, yeah, I appreciate them trying to go and, take different angles. It's such a it's such a strange thing, I think, coverage wise, because there is so much of that time and build up, and you're covering so much time for what is a very short event. But obviously, you got to give it justice, and you got to have time to give your advertisers time on the air. So that's what it's all about. But yeah, it really did. I think they did some unique things that made it fun to watch.
Well, I like the fact that how honest he was too. Speaking of worth, just like one thing they talked to me said, I've never been this nervous in my life. It's only going to get worse. So it was just not, it seems like he a little bit more, candid with just because just a different setting and all that too, and just a different type of what do you want to call, like there's just like a different culture around it than other sports. So
Hmm.
I think you get a little bit more honesty as much as you're going to get at least. So
Yeah.
that also does, and even when you go to events, like of course go into this, you wouldn't turn it down if you had the opportunity, but just being whatever it might be a basketball game, football game, whatever the sport, in this case, horse racing, you do miss a lot of like when it comes to like camera angles and just what's going on when you're kind of there because you're stuck in one spot and you can only see so much as far as you can see or what's around you. On TV, it is kind of nice to have those like inside baseball type of things when you're watching some of this pregame show.
Yeah, yeah, very true. Cool to see those different wrinkles in there, and yeah, it is a different world, and I think that's what's also neat about it too. Is like, because most people, I don't think give two thoughts about the fact that there's horse races going on all the time in the country. They don't even realize it, but it is a big sport still, and there's still a lot of people that are involved in it. And I think it's cool that, and a lot of them made that mention, that like it gives that spotlight to something that's not always paid attention to, and gives those jockeys a day kind of in the sun, all those trainers, guys that put a lot of time into something that they love, and you get a little bit of a highlight on it. So I think that's cool. Then the Jason Worth thing too, I think is neat too, because he's part of that group as well, where we've started to see some of these deals where there's like it's a crowdfunding type of thing almost, where you can get in, you can pay to have a piece of these certain horses, and then hope that they make a position like this to run in the Derby. And we've seen that a few times now here. And he made mention of that on the walk, like, hey, you want to get involved in it, get you can come walk with me next year if you pay in. So it's kind of cool to, and he even said, getting different people into the sport. So kind of fun. And I think mixes it up, because I think too the other side of it is the perception is it's just stuffy, and it's an elusive elite club that you can't get in, kind of thing. But it's really not that way. I think that day gives it that luster because of the tradition around it and the things that go on around it. But a typical day at the racetrack, you're not seeing the same kind of dress, so it's kind of fun. I don't know. Definitely a unique event for sure. Yeah, and like you said, we got burned as far as what we were talking about. I mean, heck, when we were recording the first time, there was a scratch for one of the horses we liked, and then right after we were done, I had sent another tweet out. There's another guy that I talked about that got a scratch with Grande, and I think he would have been a great horse too because he was another closing horse that would have had a chance to have a good run, but he got scratched. And so yeah, things just kind of didn't go our way. A couple of the other horses I was looking at with Chunk of Gold and then American Promise. American Promise ran a terrible race. Chunk of Gold was in the mix there for a while. He was up there, but then he kind of faded right at the end. He didn't have the gas down the stretch. He was up too far, close to the front of the pace there for a long time, so didn't work out. So yeah, our picks overall weren't terrific, but and really even the payout. I mean, if you were somebody that was able to nail it, uh, I think the exacta only paid like $47 because it was a 5-1 and a 7-2 horse. So you didn't wasn't a big day for that type of thing with some of the underdogs that we've had recently. So if you were looking for value, you really weren't going to find it in that race that time. But yeah, it was fun to see. I guess the different people involved, and of course that was the one thing I was thinking of too. Is it's always kind of fun when they do it's almost like Sunday Night Football when they're doing the lineups, like the jockeys pop up, they say where they're from and stuff. It's kind of a unique little twist in there that something that's familiar to folks and bring it to a different world is kind of cool as well. But yeah, overall, interesting race. I thought it was a good race. It was fun to watch still with that, horse coming on late to win it, and we'll see. Obviously, the attention now turns to can Sovereignty turn to the Preakness and do the same thing and give himself a chance to fight that elusive Triple Crown as we work towards the Belmont as well. So we'll have our eye on that, and we'll talk about that, of course, down the road. Also, another thing that we were talking about as far as picks are concerned, or at least you were focused on, because you're well more versed in this than I am. But big fight weekend, lots of things going on, both Friday and Saturday through the weekend as we build up to Cinco de Mayo. It's kind of become a tradition to have some of those bigger events. And SJ, how'd that go this weekend?
Okay. I mean, not great. The good news is the ones we were a little more heavy on ended up cashing out. So honestly, the big story was kind of a little bit of a letdown as far as the entertainment value of the fights as far in the boxing world. The New Times Square deal in New York was a little bit funky because I guess I mean I knew they'd have a limited crowd, but I guess they couldn't like sell tickets and have actual fans. So it was
Mm,
mostly just like somehow you had to get an invite, and a lot of the TikTokers and influencers end up doing that, and whoever else. So
uh,
that they're not exactly going to make for a a rowdy like your typical fight
raucous crowd,
crowd
right?
too busy taking selfies or doing whatever else. So that will put damper on things. And then I guess they couldn't which this made sense. That I think I knew this prehand. I don't remember if I mentioned this or not, but they had wanted to show the fights just like simulcasted on the big screens there that are kind of surrounding all the buildings. And that was a city violation, of course, because with traffic and stuff, because it wasn't shut down the streets, they just kind of shut down this little block. So that made
Uh,
sense. And but I don't think they did like a watch party there at some place there in the area. So but as far as the fights go, I guess the biggest news was probably in the main event was ended up being an upset with Ryan Garcia ended up losing a decision, and most had him. I had him in rounds 4 through 6 getting a knockout, but most, whether there was that rounds or not, but just overall assumed it was going to be some type of a knockout or some stoppage. So that was a upset considering that Romero was, I think, to win a decision. So you'd have to have been pretty specific on him. But if you'd have bet him to win a decision, at least in one book, it was plus 2,000. So that shows you how I mean, you had a good day on that. I thought, just, a 10, 20, 50 spot down, something like that, you'll be sitting pretty good. So that's a bit of an upset there. And then last night over in I guess it'd been morning there, about night for us over in Saudi Arabia. Canelo Alvarez got the win. I hit the distance pick, and that's why I went more heavy on. Just hadn't had a lot of knockouts, but in this case, or late hasn't had a lot of knockouts as of late. But in this case, it was more of the guy was kind of there just to collect his prize money and just dance around and not get embarrassed. Like I don't even know how many punches. The stats were just putrid. I mean, there was no
mm,
action. It's awful. It's kind of bad when when you someone that watches fights on the regular basis, if you're like, man, I can't barely watch this, it's a little bit off. You're like, this is real bad. And then do have one more tonight. Inoue, they're from in Vegas. He'll be lacing up the gloves there tonight for a top rank boxing card there on ESPN. So that'll be interesting. That's one we still got on and I'm going pretty heavy on that to get a finish within the first 3 rounds. So
Okay.
we'll keep an eye on that one. UFC was in Des Moines. That was another mixed bag, kind of 50-50 deal. But in the main event was probably the big hit there. Got the unders on that one with a I believe a second round finish, knee injury, but basically was from a submission attempt. So that was actually a pretty good card and decent crowd there. I still
Hmm.
always kind of I'd like to see a full house because it's cool to people support the
Hmm.
fighters and that thing, but it also sucks because it's like, man, they're just gouging these people and it's kind of awful there. But I mean, if you're gonna pay it, they're gonna keep putting those prices there. So what are you gonna do?
Yeah, 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 we've talked about that at length, so we'll see if that ever changes. Yeah, I did see that it was a lot of people kind of making a deal about that De Ritter upset as well over Nichols, so
Yeah.
pretty big upset there in Des Moines.
Yeah, that was definitely. I guess somehow I was actually honestly surprised that he was the underdog. Like overall, I could see
Mm,
him winning by finish. Was a bit surprising, but I actually kind of thought he might win. But I was thinking a decision, so I had gone over 2.5 rounds just to kind of give me some cushion there in case Nickel ended up getting a win. But the thing with him is, I mean, he literally has 7 MMA fights. It's not that he's like, I don't know whether he's good or bad. We don't really know yet. And that's
hmm.
Nickel is. It's just he doesn't have an experience, like, and he's not really wrestling, which is strange.
Mm,
and it's like he's almost like doesn't want to do it because that's what everyone thinks he
yeah.
is. And I
Hmm.
was like, well, I mean, I get that part, but also it's like, I mean, you got to want to win too. So what's your good, your strengths until that other side of it comes around, you got to kind of lean on that. But I mean, it was actually a pretty good action fight, and there were some other good ones, a lot of blood and guts fights, some big knockouts. So as far as like maybe the names on these cards usually aren't like not everybody's gonna know who it is, but when it plays out and you can watch it, and that's the nice thing, it is available for most people to watch on whatever ESPN platform for the
Mm.
most case in these fight night versions. But it's some a lot of times the entertainment's there, just a lot of action. So that was good. At least there was a good action packed card.
Yeah, yeah, good stuff there. And like you said, looked like pretty good support for that. So that was what was going on with the fight game here this weekend. It turned into a pretty big weekend too on the NHL NBA front. We ended up with some game sevens to try to decide some series, and we've had well on both sides. But I'll start off here and kind of just give you the update on where we stand here with what's happening. There's one more yet to come actually here tonight as we're recording. But yesterday, Nuggets were able to knock off the Clippers and win that series 4 games to 3. 120-101 ends up being the final. And did I see that stat right? Is it the fourth team now that Harden's lost a game seven with in like 4 years in a row or something? That's pretty incredible, dude.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I know seen a pretty good rant making the rounds of just like another team he had played for, and when they lost, kind of just going through all of his. I know Durant gets a lot of heat for his moves and going around, but Harden's not far behind.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, yeah, it's he does for some reason he gets. I don't know if people just don't. He's not in the doesn't talked about as much because he's not kind of on that. He's a great player, but he's probably not on that elite star level. But yeah, he hasn't had much success in the postseason, and just his solution is just to go somewhere else. So I guess in the off season he may be making a move again because that's kind of that's been his habit there, is his kind of way of doing business.
Yeah. The Knicks didn't beat the Pistons 4-2. That was a 116-113 victory there on Thursday night. And then setting up tonight, there is game 7 between the Rockets and the Warriors. Friday night was the only game on the NBA schedule. The Rockets were able to have a big fourth quarter and win that 115-107. I actually did catch a chunk of that game there at the end of in the second half, and it was really kind of shocking. I mean, especially for a team playing at home to just fall apart in the last quarter of the game. I mean, the Warriors couldn't hit anything. I mean, even their guys that you obviously expect to hit shots, they were just not going down for them, and Houston just kind of kept putting, just stacking buckets. It wasn't like they were a blitzkrieg pace or anything, but they just kept making shots, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger with that lead. It shrunk a little bit at the end, but you never felt like they were uncomfortable. And I don't know, that to me, the way that happened, that does not boast well for Golden State coming into tonight.
Yeah, I wouldn't be too confident if you're a fan of that team. It's they kind of almost feel like it was set up there for them to just kind of take that series and seal it up. And I know Curry's been having some thumb issues, at least allegedly, because we've seen some photos go about, and just the way he's been playing, it would make sense.
Mm-hmm.
But it was more like, yeah, I mean, he's struggling, but I think it was like 5 or 6 minutes into the fourth, they had like 4 points.
Yeah.
Like you just can't. I mean, it doesn't matter. You got to find another way to score. Somebody's got to pick up the slack. And then the thing is, though, they weren't really like, for the most part. I don't think there's a few here and there always, but they weren't like necessarily taking bad shots. They just
No.
couldn't hit anything. I mean, there were some open looks, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe a couple drives here and there was like contested, but a decent shot. But this couldn't get anything to fall.
Yeah.
So I don't know if who you're going to rely on here, but somebody's going to have to come up with the big one tonight if they want to steal this one, because they're going to need to. I mean, outscoring is the only way they're going to do it. They're not going to win that ugly, slow pace, because that's kind of what Houston wants to do, anyways.
Yeah, yeah. There was a lot of like drive and kick stuff that for them in that early in that quarter, and they had, yeah, like you said, there was. I mean, they got somebody open in the corner or something, but they just were not making anything. I remember 2 straight possessions where Butler had an open corner three and just like not even close. So, that's not good. Not confidence booster heading into the final game of the series. And I was impressed too by a couple guys on Houston as well. I mean. Give Steven Adams a lot of credit. He's playing out of his butt, just
Well,
being
they were
everywhere.
trying to do the hack-a-shack deal to him, and he just kept hitting
Yeah,
free throws. So,
yeah,
I mean, you give him credit for that alone. Let just inside presence as well, because as other teams have seen, just that still does factor. And I know the game's changed quite a bit, and you want people to be able to handle the ball basically 1 through 5 positions, which is the case for the most part. But you still need that inside presence, especially when it comes to tight games and rebounding, and just even if you don't block a shot, just contesting it and not just giving up easy layups. That's still going to be always a big deal in basketball, no matter how the game changes.
yeah. The other series, by the way, there is one going on, opening up the series between the Pacers and Cavs here today as we record. And then Knicks and Celtics will get going on Monday, as will the Nuggets and Thunder for that series. So that's what's going on right now in the NBA. One other topic we did want to touch on real quick here in the NBA before I move on to the NHL. Of course, there was, if you were paying attention, and I'm sure you probably saw the news blurb at some point, even if you're not watching, at the end of the series when the Pacers, Halliburton makes a nice layup, crossing over, getting past Giannis there to win that game in that series, and his dad who has always been a very I don't know how you brashish person. He's not afraid of the limelight. Let's just say that he likes to insert himself in the conversation a lot, and he certainly did that at the end of the game. They made the play. He comes out on the court. And he's got his little flag that he's got his son's face on, and he's waving it in front of Giannis, and then starts talking and saying some ththings. And eventually, Giannis got tired of it and kind of got up in his face, and a little altercation started to ensue. Now it went on because they're later in the handshake lines. There was Mathurin who got upset with the way that he was, talking to him and holding on to his head. So it just kind of bubbled over. But yeah, I mean, the reason I wanted to bring it up is because I think we've started to see more and more of this possibility out there. Not that it's happened a lot, I guess, but the way that we've set up these events, and I get it, like the way that you want to market it is, having access to the event, being part of it. You want the fans to have an impact on the game. You want them to be a part of the experience. But there's so much of that on-court seating and easy access to the floor for those people that are in those front rows at these NBA games that, you're going to have interactions between players and fans, and it just so happens that here's a guy who's the father of one of the players, and eventually bad things are probably going to happen, and I think this was just one of those situations, and I don't know how you change it, how you fix it, unless you're just going to be a little bit more provocative as far as having some more security around to tell people not to run on the floor. That would maybe be the only solution, but I don't know. I think it's interesting, and it's probably a problem that needs to be addressed in some way.
Yeah, I didn't actually see this catch happening live. So first thing I see the video getting tossed around, I see him walking towards him. I was like, "Oh crap, he's gonna knock him out!" Because the way it sets up, if you haven't been watching the whole game or whatever, and if it wasn't Giannis, if it was like Thompson from the Rockets or some freaking Draymond Green,
Yeah, you
somebody
would have.
like
Yeah,
that, they probably would have. And that's the thing, though. It's like, I mean, kind of chuckling here, but it's like, dude, a league that had the freaking Malice in the Palace,
yeah.
you think you'd be like, dude, it doesn't matter. I don't care how many, how whatever you famous you are and how how many hangers on you got in your entourage. Like they don't have they can watch from the stands like everybody else or up in your box or what keep them off the. It doesn't. I don't see how anybody besides the players or staff or
Hmm.
like whoever like the mascots and whatever cheerleaders whatever they call them dance team all that. Other than that, I don't see how anybody thinks that they have a right or even allowed to go on the floor. Like
Hmm.
it doesn't make any sense. There's no reason for it
Yeah,
except for something bad to happen, like you said, and that's about as close as we've come. And I think I did see like he won't be at the games for
yeah.
at least this next series, which I mean probably wise choice and makes sense, but
Mhm.
they definitely dodged a bullet, at least for me. And like I kind of course like we said, laughing about it a little bit, but like man, that could have been real bad just because like what did you think was gonna happen? I mean, not saying that like you're not going up against like somebody that's like I don't know Giannis's fight history, but you're still going against a 6'10" whatever pro athlete that could
Yeah,
probably have their way with you pretty easily. Like, what are
yeah,
you thinking there, bro? Like,
yeah. He's not a tiny individual by any
yeah,
means.
it's like even if it wasn't like even if like a football or basketball player, or any pro athlete that's maybe not like a skilled fighter or trained in that world, it's still like they definitely have more of a what do you call it, like more of a chance against your average Joe.
Yeah, yeah.
Whether just as when you're gonna throw the hands, like
Mhm.
I don't think it's probably a good idea unless maybe you think he has some good street
Yeah,
cred out there.
yeah. And as fans or whatever, yeah, people get caught up in the emotions of the moment, and they kind of say things from the stands that you probably shouldn't say, and sometimes you go back and think, ah, yeah, I probably shouldn't have acted like that or whatever. But yeah, never to take that to the next level with being like right in front of somebody on the floor. Like it just, I don't know how that even went through his head that was okay. I have no idea. It was interesting. I saw that on the show, the after show that Chuck and Shaq were
Mhm.
arguing about a little bit. They had different opinions on it because Shaq was of the opinion that, well, Giannis probably said something to him before too, which probably is true. They probably were talking the whole time, but they both, I'm sure, said shit. So it's not
Yeah.
like that's an excuse for acting that way. And then when Halliburton got up there and on the press row and they asked him about it, he's like, "Well, yeah, I don't agree with what my dad did. I just saw
Yeah.
it. Like, I'm gonna go talk to him. This is stupid. Like, why are we doing this?"
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. He was like he did a pretty. Both the players handled it about as well as you could. Consider all things considered. It's not gonna be perfect because that's not an ideal or typical situation. But as far as Giannis and Halliburton, they both probably handled it as well as possible, and just got to keep him away and whoever else away. Because it's not like he's the only one we've seen. I mean, he hasn't gone on the court, but John Morant's dad has been in the mix as much as any as of late. So yeah, it's I don't know. I guess dad's got to realize they're not the ones playing, but I mean that's a totally that's you still see that on a daily basis if you have kids in
Yeah.
sports or go to any high school events or college even just it's just that's like a thing that won't die. I don't think ever.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, and I think that's part of it too for me is like we don't want to set this example at the highest level either. Like, let's not encourage other idiots that we're going to see at the AAU tournament to like
Yeah.
go run on the floor and be an asshole. Like, so I'm glad they're addressing it, and hopefully it does change in the future. And yeah, maybe make it so where really the nobody should have that access unless it's unless it's like. Unless it's Hakeem trying to get on the floor to celebrate with his team,
There
like
you go. Yeah.
that's different.
Well,
So
especially with how much was going on, you had to know no one was going out there with good intentions.
no, no, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then of course, and then the players get involved a little bit, and luckily that de-escalated fast because that could have been bad too. But just not a good deal. And yeah, we'll see if they make some future changes to try to avoid that type of stuff down the road. NHL. I did want to bring this up because they're having a couple of game sevens. So one of them that happened last night, and we're going to have another one here tonight. Blues and Jets are tied at 3, and they play tonight to try to see who advances. And whoever advances out of that series will play another team that just finished up their game 7 last night. And the Dallas Stars beat the Colorado Avalanche. And I did watch most of this game. Was really, I mean, if you're an Avalanche fan, you're absolutely heartbroken. Like you got stabbed in the heart because it was about as bad a luck as you could get in a couple of instances during the game. But I also will say there was a mix of some incredible talent in there for Dallas as well. They score all 4 of their goals with about 12 minutes left to go in the game. So all bets usually, if you're up 2 going into the third in the game 7, you feel pretty confident that your team's going to pull it out and get the victory. But the Stars got one on the board, and then it seemed like it just kind of got things rolling for them a little bit. The second one that tied it up was a little bit of luck. I don't say that for sure. It was a wraparound attempt that goes off of a skate. It comes around the corner and it's just like wow. I mean, you just can't. Those types of things. Just sometimes the puck bounces your way, and that's part of hockey. But it was pretty incredible. And yeah, as a well, of course you could tell the player immediately that was involved was just like, you got to be kidding me. Like, what the fuck? What are we doing? So that was a bad deal. There was a little bit of controversy, I think, in the penalty that was called that got him the power play to have the third goal. But I thought it was warranted when I watched the replay. I mean, the guy, he pretty much did grab him and bring him down to the ice. So, but it was just if you want to see a textbook like work of art power play execution goal, go watch that third goal because it went across the crease and he just like perfect tape to tape pass. Like guy easily could have just thrown one at the net from that angle where he was on the far side, but decides to send it all the way across. It goes across the blue line and just right on the tape for him to send it right through and get that third goal. And it's just a perfect setup. Go watch even the whole play leading up to it. The passing was terrific. And they did an excellent job there, the Stars. And then they did get an empty netter at the end, and very poetic too. Because it's a player that was part of the Colorado Avalanche organization for a decade in Mikko Rantanen, who ends up with the hat trick. He gets that last empty netter to send all the hats flying from the stands onto the ice. And always poetic when those types of things happen. But to have a hat trick in Game 7 against the team he used to play for, it doesn't get much better than that, SJ.
No, and that's the thing, like you said, with freaking hockey, it's like doesn't really matter. 3-0 deficit doesn't mean anything. And man, can you imagine those just the way that I mean, I'm not a fan of the team by any means, but just losing in that manner, I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
that's a tough pill to swallow, especially when I mean against a team that doesn't really need those breaks. And Dallas has been, one of the better freaking franchises in since NHL for decades. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like you
Mm-hmm.
can't even catch a break when you maybe the better team, quotes. So yeah, it's I need to get on these totals here. And then now that the NBA is winding down here, because I used to had some good luck with that. So we'll see once the last series there with the Blues and gets wrapped up, then we'll move on to the conference semis and try to get some more plays here because we need to get a little more locked in. I haven't caught too much of these initial ones just because it's like I do like that though they're better at playing every day, but it's like man, it's a lot of games
It
because
is, yeah.
you rarely see a sweep, and 5 games is like minimum almost, or like that's
Mm-hmm.
like five is pretty. You did that's a hell of a win.
Yeah.
It's six at least on average. It seems like it seems like those series always go long.
Yeah, yep, you're not wrong, and it does make it like, obviously exciting towards the end. And I agree, I'm kind of the same way. It's like unless your team's involved, it's really hard to get totally invested. Like I still love playoff hockey. I mean, it's incredible. Like if you get the chance, I do watch it. But yeah, there are so many games, and it's coming at you each and every day with at least a couple going on. It's hard to follow everything, and then. It is fun though when you get to these moments when you get the game sevens. Like I always try to do my best to sit down and watch a little bit of the game sevens because it's just so intense and so much fun to watch. And crowd was incredible for Dallas last night there at the end. I mean, you don't get much of a better atmosphere than that with a rally like that. So that was pretty cool. Yeah, and my heart does go out to Avs fans because they've been knocked out by that team a few times now here in these last few years, and it's got to hurt even more that it's one of your former dudes that was sticking the knife in your back. So, hell of a deal. He handled it really well too, because I will say they asked him afterwards. Of course, you're gonna naturally ask him about. He's like, how did it feel in the handshake line? He's like, well, honestly, kind of hard, kind of awkward, very emotional. He's like, those are still my guys. I love all those guys. Like, they're still my brothers. I play with them. I had that bond with them for so long. It's not just like it goes away. So he was pretty honest about it. And but he said, hey, this team. I love playing with them. They don't give up, and they've been close the last few years. I've seen that. So now I get to be a part of trying to take them a little bit further. So we'll see what happens. It'll be fun to see how they do the next round. So that's what's going on there. I mentioned the Game 7 tonight between the Blues and the Jets. And then you've got the other series that'll get fired up. Panthers Maple Leafs open up their conference semifinal series on Monday night. So the Leafs fans did get to breathe a sigh of relief. They actually got through one for once in the first round and closed it out. And then the Capitals will take on the Hurricanes. The Oilers will take on the Golden Knights as they came out of their series there with against the Minnesota Wild. So that's what's happening there in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Been some fun stuff to watch there. One other topic that we wanted to touch on here briefly before we finish up, and this has been obviously an ongoing story. Unfortunately, for one of the team that I follow has been a big part of it. For some reason, the state of Iowa, as we all know, got in the midst and the crosshairs of different individuals that were trying to crack down on gambling issues, and happened to both athletes at Iowa and Iowa State, even at Northern Iowa a little bit, I believe. A few guys that got mixed into this, but was pretty just strange, that the target ended up on these two schools, and you didn't hear a lot of that stuff happening in other places around the country when damn well it was happening everywhere, and probably still does to an extent. I mean, I think guys are getting a little bit smarter because the technology, like we've talked about, is there to catch them pretty easily if they want to go about it. But anyways, part of that whole saga that's led to guys ended up having to leave school, changing, their whole careers. Hunter Decker's one of the guys that was part of that. They ended up at Iowa Western. And then if you've been paying attention, was part of Gruden's, little QB class thing. He was pushing him, trying to get him to move on to the next level. We'll see if that happens. I haven't even seen, I guess, if he's gotten signed somewhere. But anyways, the school is involved in that. A lot of players involved. And eventually what happened is they all just kind of got a slap on the wrist because they dropped most of the charges. It was just a deal where some of them were fined because of the things that they did, whether they were underage was some part of the issue. And then the betting on your own team thing, they didn't really pursue. It happened to a few guys, but they didn't really get that penalized for it, I guess, so to speak. But now there's been a story out, and I think this is just kind of tailing off from all that in the past. But the 5 staffers, so football staffers of the 2022 football staff for Iowa State, have been basically fined for what they've been doing. Jace Haycock, Chase Clark, Michael Dreyer, Kyle Hyland, Mason Williams were the guys that were named in the report, alleging that they had a bunch of wagers, in thousands again, of different wagers that they were made, totaling a lot of money, and they included men's and women's basketball games, and it involved Iowa State. So that's where the infraction comes into play because they're betting on teams that are involved on their campus. The 5 acknowledged that they had knowingly violated NCAA sports wagering bylaws in a negotiated resolution that was finalized last week. They're each subject to a 1-year show clause order through 2026, so they'll serve their little limitations and suspension or whatever. But interesting that this is still going on. I mean, here we are 3 years later, and we're still talking about people wrapped up in this for some reason.
Well, and with all these stories, I always find it interesting when they say placed whatever X amount of bets for X amount, whatever. I'm like, you never show like what was won or lost, or because I'm assuming they had to have won a decent amount to, because why else would they be kind of coming after them?
Yeah.
So I'm just curious to find that out because some of these were, almost $12,000. One of the individuals bet, and I was like, that's a That's I
Oh,
mean
that's a decent
almost
chunk of money. Yeah.
over 18,000 there. That's a good chunk of change. So
Yeah.
in a short amount of time. So, but it is like I don't think it's a isolated thing. It's like people. I mean, the problem is like probably think oh, no one's gonna find out type of thing, just because it's like
Hmm.
yeah. I mean, it's a dumb rule, but it is the rule, so you can't do it. Just like with all our jobs, we have stuff we'd like. Well, I don't know, we can't do that, but we just can't do it
Yeah.
unless you want to have unless you want to have a different job. So, but the the main thing to me is just that how the fact it keeps coming up is like, is there like an overzealous like lawmaker there in the state that's just trying like total anti-gambling and was mad when it got passed, and now they're just kind of trying to stick it to any and every individual they can. Is almost what it seems like, because I know they were probably one of the states that's had it actually probably, you know, for compared to other states they've had it a little bit longer.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
it passed there, several years back, but just based on population, I mean, they can't be that many more people betting within that state compared to like, in New York
Hmm.
or wherever
Hmm.
that does have, like populated, bigger states like that. Even Kansas right down here, you get a lot of the from Missouri, you get a lot of that overlap there with the neighboring states. So I mean, that's probably sizable comparison. You don't hear about any types of stories like that, few and far between. So that to me, that's like the main thing with this deal, is how it just keeps coming up over and over again within that same region.
Yeah, yeah. I would venture to guess the take in the state of Iowa is a drop in the bucket compared to California, New York, whatever. Like, why are we focusing so hard here? You're right. Maybe there is some people that are involved in the higher ups that are like out for some sort of vendetta. I don't really know. It obviously was bizarre when it happened in the first place with the players, and now with this residual stuff you're going on. I mean, I get it. Like we want to make sure these guys aren't doing this stuff. Like you said, it's a rule. Don't do it. It's not that hard. Follow the rules. And it's not like they can't bet on anything. You just can't bet on your team. So don't do that. Pretty
Yeah,
easy to
there's
figure
plenty of
out.
other options. You see, you got darts and whatever else on the
Yeah.
board these days. Like the Korean baseball is always popular. There's a lot of options out there. Just
Yeah.
don't, yeah, just stay away from your team.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I guess if it was me personally, I would probably be in the more apt to like just say, I'm going to stay away from my sport. You know,
Yeah.
that would probably be the smarter thing to do, because especially like you've coached guys, they're going to go on to the next level in the league. That would just feel awkward to me if I'm still wagering on their teams then down the road. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know, that doesn't jive real well.
Well, and then you'd also eliminate any chance of like something. If you were to do something on the up and up and anything that looks suspicious,
Yeah.
be having that job right away is like the red flags are going to go up. So
Mm-hmm.
why even put yourself in that position? It's
Yeah.
just, I mean, yeah, it's tempting. And I mean, the thing is, it doesn't sound like in this case, at least, any of these were like they thought it was any type of collusion or any type of
Yeah.
fixing or any type. So that wasn't on the thing, but that's going to be everyone's first thought when work there and you bet. I mean, just doesn't put yourself in a good situation.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know it's not like glamorous jobs, but just getting those type of staff positions is not really easy. So why would you risk it? And just being
Yeah.
on like, even though it might seem like, oh, an equipment manager, like that's not an easy job to get at like a Division 1 school.
Yeah. That's a good
So I
point.
mean, I just to risk that for, even though we
Yeah.
said it's a decent amount to bet, but I'm sure it's much less than your salary, and now you got to find a new job, because I know it seemed like most of them bounced back. I know said it was like, which I didn't necessarily like this, but I mean, I guess it's public knowledge. But they said he's now working at a sporting goods store, so he kind of had a little bit of a drop off there, or that individual, I guess he or she, I should say who it was, but either way, like most of them kind of landed on their feet with another school doing something, but it still seems like the risk isn't worth the reward, even if you think you're gonna cash in on these bets, because then they can find a new job and then your name's kind of blasted everywhere. And
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, good point. So I don't know. I'm guessing this is probably the end of the line for this particular
I'll
line
take
of
I'll take
story.
that bet. Yeah.
but who knows? We'll see. There could be more to come out of the great state of Iowa on that front at some point here. But obviously, yeah, we've seen these instances, and hopefully people are taking note and starting to learn lessons a little bit here along the way too. That's for sure. Before we finish, there was one more thing I had kind of was losing my mind here earlier trying to remember, but this is going back full circle here to the Derby again. I just thought this was intriguing. The scratch that I had talked about with Grande, I saw a post from their stable, that came out the day that he was scratched, and they made comments about how it was the track's doctors who basically made the decision that he's not going to race, when in reality, all like their X-rays and stuff came back clean. Apparently the injury that the horse had was improving, and they felt like he was in a good place. I mean, obviously, the way that horse racing has gone in the last decade, they're going to be as cautious as they possibly can, and especially in a moment like this where all eyes are on the sport, because there has been a huge rash and issue with horse races, or horses dying. So they're going to try to avoid those situations. But you would think when there are parameters set in place, and then you're following the guidelines, and your horse is getting better, that you would be allowed to be in the race. And so they were kind of calling it out, like, why is this happening? Why are we getting excluded? I guess they had come out recently. People that were involved with that stable and with that horse had made some comments about, that were disparaging comments, I guess, about the track and some stuff as well. So they're kind of like, interesting now that this is happening. We're being excluded. So, you never know what the whole, politics of the deal is. But I did find that interesting that they kind of just publicly came out and said that they didn't agree with the decision.
Well, and you understand that there's, like you said, you want to keep it as you don't want all these bad news, bad headlines and stuff with, if you avoid anything possible. Of course, you can't. This stuff's going to happen. It's just nature of the sport. But as much as you can prevent it, do it. And there's guidelines in place that make sense. But if you were to meet those guidelines, you would think, there's got to be some of a something on your end to kind of be like, well, I did this, so we're good to go. And it's it seems a little bit too much maybe authority given to someone to say no thanks, and especially when there's a little bit of a history there.
Mm-hmm.
Again, you put kind of just like those coaches put yourself in a bad spot. Not necessarily the owner of the horse, I don't think, but the track. Now there's going to be a lot of questions going forward, and I'm sure that, like, you can imagine that not all these trainers are best buds and get along with the people running the Churchill Downs there, because there's probably a lot of conflict and things they don't see eye to eye on. But you got to have, some type of relationship going forward.
Yeah.
If you want to be a part of this event. So that would be something to watch, just because I can't imagine this is just going to be something. Oh, okay, we'll just get them next year and they're going to be forgotten about. It's going to stick with them for a little while. And also there'll probably be some headlines, even into the next events there, about kind of what happened there. If he's to run another race here down the road, or a big one in the near future, it's going to be brought up pretty quick.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And it makes you wonder if there will eventually be some sort of intermediary in between the two too. Is there going to be some kind of arbitrator situation for moments like that? I don't know. It's intriguing. Obviously, I think everybody wants to do the right thing. It's just they're not on the same page here. So, be interesting to see what happens going down the road. All right, that's what we had on our schedule here this week for you, and we will obviously have much more coming up as far as NHL, NBA is concerned. So make sure you're following us on Twitter at SJMBets, at Cherokee CP. We'll continue to hit you with some of those picks day to day. And then as other big things come up, of course, we'll have the other Triple Crown races down the road. We'll have some more fight cards on the way. We'll work in some of that stuff for you as well. So make sure that you like, subscribe, get the notifications on the YouTube channel, and make sure that you are liking and sharing the podcast, available in all the major podcast platforms, including our host over at Spotify. That's going to do it for this round of Everyday We're Covering. Go get fire up one of them margaritas. Celebrate March Madness. Enjoy your Cinco de Mayo. That's SJ Munoz. I'm Chris Parks. Thanks for joining us for another week of Everyday We're Covering. We'll see you next time for some more covers.